There is a moment of the stampede that we're seeing on our screens right now. On the left side, you can see, in fact, how you have fans who are trying to desperately cross barricades, literally trying to pull themselves up and get out of the moment of the stampede. On the right side, you have how, in fact, fans were later taken out by the police and, of course, other bystanders over there, the security personnel who are gathered over there, taking out a large number of those fans who were literally crushed in that stampede. Unfortunate turn of events certainly coming out of Bengaluru, but that's where it's at the moment. The fact that we have a huge amount of potential injured as well as those who could have suffered fatalities at the moment. We have our guest joining us. We'll go back to Imran as well as Neha in just a moment, but let me quickly introduce our panelists joining us. We have Mr. Arvind Kumar Jain, former DGP UP, joining us. Chandrasekhar Luthra is a senior sports journalist. But I want to go first and foremost to Rajinder Amarnath, former cricketer, joining us. Mr. Amarnath, very, very tragic turn of events that has taken place outside the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bengaluru. And that short drive from Vidhan Sauda to the Chinnaswamy Stadium and that victory parade has proved to be, even before it started, has proved to be fatal for many of the fans who were gathered there.
Well, my heart really goes out for the families who have lost their dear ones, and it's one of the most tragic things to have happened on the day of celebration. I'm really appalled to see the scene what Times Now is showing me, but because I've never seen this kind of problem arising at Chinnaswamy Stadium. But I at the same time fail to understand about the arrangements made by the local association along with the police out there, be it the normal police or the traffic police. I'm very sure they never took into consideration the kind of frenzy which will come out of the fans, because they wanted to see their heroes coming with that victory lap at the stadium and the trophy coming to Bengaluru for the first time in 18 years of IPL. But excuse me. But I fail to understand why couldn't they foresee all this in the first place, because it's so important when you organize an event of such a magnitude. You have to take into considerations of the worst as the first step towards organizing something of that in that big scale. And it's very heartening to see this happening after a successful IPL final. And to be honest, the words are not good enough to describe the loss for the families.
Absolutely. Very, very horrific scenes, in fact, coming out of, Bengaluru there. Let me bring in Mr. Arvind Kumar Jain. Mr. Jain, we just heard Mr. Amarnath mention how, in fact, it is very, very tragic when there was such a huge frenzy. We knew, just judging by the kind of responses on social media, the kind of responses we saw celebrations late into the night in Bengaluru, that there could be the possibility of huge crowds thronging when there was that victory rally that was announced by RCB earlier today. Despite that, many questions about whether there was adequate policing, whether there was adequate management of the crowds, and whether better barricading and crowd management facilities could have been put in place to ensure that this kind or this nature of a tragedy does not take place. Mr. Jain.
You are absolutely correct. The Bengaluru police, the traffic department, and Bengaluru police failed miserably in assessing the people, the young crowd which will turn up for this event. And as one speaker said, that RCB won this trophy after 18 years, and there was a lot of frenzy. The last night I was seeing on TV channels, almost Diwali is being celebrated throughout Bengaluru city. So it should have been visualized by Bengaluru police, several DCPs. Not one, several DCPs, including Joint Commissioner Law and Order, Special Commissioner Law and Order, etc., should have been there along with the paramilitary forces, and all the gates should have been manned properly, and there should have been arrangements for proper barricading, several tiers of barricading so that people can't jump through them. So I think Bengaluru police failed miserably in assessing the crowd which will turn up for this event.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me bring in Chandrasekhar Luthra as well. Chandrasekhar, you've covered, I don't know how many dozen matches perhaps at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. I've covered several of them in the early part of my career as well. But, we know that Chinnaswamy Stadium itself is in a very congested part of town. Perhaps not the most ideal place to be carrying out a big rally, particularly when you know that there's a possibility of tens of thousands, perhaps even lakhs of fans coming in, because that is the kind of cult following. It's been close to a 2-decade wait. Despite all of that, this moment of celebration has turned into one of complete tragedy. And at the moment, the toll we are hearing is 7, and we are told that there are a large number of injured as well. Very, very serious questions about the planning and execution of that victory parade that are now going to come up. And there's already a political controversy brewing up over there.
I'll not talk about political or police, whether it should be allowed or not. But the point is, what were they celebrating? My point is, it is not a Karnataka's victory or Bengaluru's victory. Look at the team. In the first playing 11, there was only one player who was a local one, Mayank Agarwal. What were they celebrating for? Virat belongs to Delhi. Everybody is either a foreigner or some other state player. What were they celebrating, and why were they celebrating? Is this the real kind of cricket? No, this is a complete betting. We have allowed bettors, we have allowed punters to come into cricket, and that is how a complete 4.5 years of battle was fought in Supreme Court. And after that, what happened? Nothing. There are betting games, there are...
All right, this is, of course, the pictures live coming in there. We are told that there are celebrations that still continue despite all of the tragic turn of events that have taken place outside the Chinnaswamy Stadium. Neha, what exactly has transpired there? Take us through. We just saw, cheering, celebration. We even saw skipper Virat Kohli addressing the crowd. Despite all of this tragedy, the celebration still went on. Can you confirm that for us?
Well, absolutely, Madhav. In fact, just behind this, inside the stadium is where the celebrations are currently underway. We've seen the team, of course, coming down here, gracing all of the fans with their presence, addressing the crowd. And, of course, even as that's taking place on one hand, on the other hand, are ambulances that are still being called into Chinnaswamy Stadium to be on standby. At least about 4 or 5 ambulances that have come in now in the past 15 minutes alone to stay on standby. Remember, of course, right after the ceremony, right after the felicitation ceremony as well, is when we're going to...
All right, those are the scenes of the celebration continuing at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bengaluru. We've seen, of course, the tragic news of fans' deaths. Neha also with us on the broadcast, if we can quickly connect with her. Neha, I believe there's an update in terms of the fans' deaths. The fatalities have gone up to 11 from 7 that we last reported. Can you confirm that, Neha?
Madhav, at least about 7 right now is what was being said earlier, and of course even as that death toll keeps rising, you see firecrackers that are being burst here at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. It is of course celebrations here for the team. Remember, of course, while it has been a very difficult moment for several families that had come down here, on the other hand, as celebrations that you see, the death toll we had mentioned earlier, of course, would only be further rising. At least about 10 is what we're picking up from our sources right now, who have been confirmed dead. Of course, to put this out on a personal account, since we've been here since noon, we can of course quite literally recall what all possibly went wrong here and why there was a clear lapse of arrangements. From about 11 in the morning is when we've seen people starting to fill up on these streets outside the stadium. While the crowd was still very much manageable there was very, very limited police that we actually spotted. Now cut to about 1 o'clock in the afternoon when, of course, there's that announcement that comes in that the Victory Parade is not going to be happening anymore. You have anxious fans, of course, who are upset that the parade's not happening anymore, and which is why even those who were possibly in other places or atop other buildings to try and get a glimpse of the parade have now come rushing straight to the stadium right here that we're at. Now cut to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon is when there was that announcement that comes in that 5 o'clock, 5 p.m. confirmed is when the felicitation is going to be happening. And, of course, from about 2:30, since when we've been doing our lives from here, the crowd has only been swelling. It was only at about 4 p.m. or so that, other police personnel from other divisions were called in, anticipating that there could be an untoward incident, anticipating that the crowds, in fact, are swelling beyond control of just the 5,000 odd cops that were placed here. Well, of course, even after all of this, remember, knowing very well that the event begins at 5 p.m., the gates to the stadium were only opened at about 4:15. If we could say that somewhere between 3:30 and 4:15, just 45 minutes prior to the actual event beginning, leading to a lot of chaos, confusion on ground, anxious, excited, ecstatic fans just trying to barge in all at once. Maybe if this could have been done in a more phased manner, probably that
there are going to be very serious questions about the arrangements that have been made there. Karishma has just spoken to Rajiv Shukla. Let's listen into what he has to say.
A very unfortunate incident has taken place in Bengaluru. Stampede outside M Chinnaswamy Stadium. People have died, people are injured. Joining me is the BCCI Vice President, Mr. Rajiv Shukla. Sir, what do you make of this? People have died in Bengaluru. Very, very unfortunate incident. People are now questioning what was the police doing, what was happening in Bengaluru.
It's extremely unfortunate incident which should not have taken place. And I know people are, they are in love with cricket. And all people in Karnataka, not only in Karnataka, throughout the country, they were happy after the victory of RCB yesterday. But that does not mean that, there should be so much crowd that people trample on each other and kill other people. It's very unfortunate. Karnataka government will definitely take whatever possible to help the people. And sometimes it happens, despite of police arrangement, if there are so many people, thousands and thousands of people are thronging upon, it becomes very difficult. And people are so much in love with Virat Kohli and other members of the team that it has happened. So it's very unfortunate. All my sympathies to those people who have really, died or injured in this thing, with their family, and whatever help is required, we will do.
Sir, but don't you think it is also the responsibility of the IPL franchisee to ensure that celebration is one thing, but it should not go out of hand? At the end of the day, it is a league. It is not an international title that we have won.
I think this has happened for the first time, that in an outcome of a league, this is what has happened. So I have heard it in football matches abroad, but not here in India. So, Let me find out the details of the incident. Then only I can comment about it.
So, but will the IPL and the BCCI take responsibility, help in what has been happening now in Bangalore?
We will discuss at BCCI level what can be done. And after that, I can get back to you.
Any action against the franchisee that has been involved? Like you said, this is the first time this has happened.
Currently, action, I cannot commit any action or anything right now unless we get all the details of the incident and who's responsible, whose fault was it, then only we can say.
But so strict action can be expected once the IPL does its inquiry?
First is to help the people, the family of the deceased and those who are injured.
Thank you, sir.
Jendra, of course, very, very serious questions that are now beginning to emerge as far as what has transpired, of course, at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. But let me quickly take this across to our guests as well joining us. We have also continuing with us is Mr. Rajendra Amarnath. Arvind Kumar Jain is with us. Dr. Nikul Patel, leader of the Congress Party, also joins us. But Rajendra Amarnath, you know, what is extremely tragic and shocking at the same time is that we have been reporting for about an hour now, at least close to an hour, about the deaths that have taken place. But despite this information coming out in the public domain, the celebration still went on at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. You know, it's mind-boggling to look at what has transpired, because this is quite insensitive of the organizers of that celebration.
Madhav, if I'm not too sure about whether the cricketers know about the gravity of the situation. Have they been told about it? I'm not too sure. Because knowing the cricketer's heart, I can tell you that if Virat Kohli was conveyed this tragic news, he would have definitely not participated. This is my understanding of this young cricketer, because I've met him a couple of times, I've spoken to him. He's very down to earth, and everybody knows about how he feels. He's a very emotional person. But I fail to understand when such a big tragedy takes place, the organizers still feel that the celebration must continue. Let me bring to the notice of everybody who's been watching this and also watching a program is when Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated in 1984, Indian team was on Pakistan tour. When the news was conveyed to...
We cut off a lot of programs were there. We didn't want to continue with the program. Only within 10 minutes with one round we just closed it. And we appeal even in the metros, whatever the metros has been jammed. We are not able to start. We are taking a little bit time to see that everything comes to the normal position.
What is at present? No,
yes. Of course. There is some issues. I will come back to you after I visit the hospital.
Sir,
No, I can't.
Only 5,000 police personnel were deployed, sir. You said the crowd that came in was running into thousands, sir.
No, it was not thousands, it was lakhs. No. See, Nodi.
BJP is saying, sir,
ನಾವು ಏನ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ನಮ್ಮವರೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. I don't blame my police department. They have done their best. But ನೀವೇ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಕಣ್ಣಲ್ಲೇ ನೋಡಿದಿರಿ, ಕ್ರೌಡ್ ನೋಡಿದಿರಿ, ಯಾರು ಕಂಟ್ರೋಲ್, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಯಾರಿಗೂ ನಾವು ಯಾರು ದೊಣ್ಣೆ ಇಸ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೊಡೆಯಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ, ಇದನ್ನ ಮಾಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗಲ್ಲ. ಏನು ಅರೇಂಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕು, ಅದಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ನಾವು ಪ್ರೊಸೆಷನ್ನ ಓಪನ್ ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಅವ್ರದ್ದು ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಇತ್ತು. ವಿ ಡಿ ನಾಟ್ ಅಲೋ, ನಂಬರ್ 1. ತಿರ್ಗಾ ವಿಧಾನಸೌಧದಿಂದ ಬರಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿತ್ತು, ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಮಾಡಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನಾವು ಪರಿಸ್ಥಿತಿ ನೋಡ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು ನಾವ್ಯಾರು ಭಾಷಣ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ, ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಕ್ ಹೋಗ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಪರವಾಗಿ ಗೌರವ ಕೊಡಬೇಕು, ಕೊಟ್ಟು. ಇಲ್ಲೂ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನಾನು ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಡೈರೆಕ್ಷನ್ಸ್ ಕೊಟ್ಟೆ. ನಮ್ಮ KCA ಸೆಕ್ರೆಟರಿಗೆ ಪ್ರೆಸಿಡೆಂಟ್ಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ರಿಕ್ವೆಸ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡೆ, ವಿತಿನ್ 10-15 ಮಿನಿಟ್ಸ್ ವಿ ಶುಡ್ ಕ್ಲೋಸ್ ದಿ ಫಂಕ್ಷನ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ನಾನೇ ಬಂದು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ಕೊಂಡು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾರು ಏನು ಮಾತಾಡದೆ ಒಂದು ರೌಂಡ್ ಮಾತ್ರ ಮಾಡಿ ಸೆಕ್ಯೂರಿಟಿಗೋಸ್ಕರ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಬಂದಂಥವ್ರಿಗೆ ಅಭಿನಂದನೆ ಸಲ್ಲಿಸಲಿಕ್ಕೋಸ್ಕರ ಮಾಡಿ ಆದಷ್ಟು ಜಲ್ದಿ ನಾವು ಮುಗಿಸಿದೀವಿ. ಅದನ್ನು ನಾನು ಹೋಗ್ತೀನಿ, ಭೇಟಿ ಹೋಗ್ತೇನೆ. ಎಸ್.
All right. In fact, this is DK Shivakumar, Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka, saying that he doesn't blame the police. We've done whatever we could. We cancelled the public rally with the public procession. And even from the Vidhan Sauda, there was a procession planned which was cancelled looking at the crowds. That's a statement coming in. Let's quickly get in an update from our reporters on ground. We have Neha joining us as well as Imran. Imran, take us through what exactly DK Shivakumar has said. We understand that the BJP has already hit out at the state government for the poor arrangements that were in place, something that the Deputy Chief Minister is denying, Imran.
Sir, what do you have to say?
We are all very sad. It's the victory has turned into mourning. Very, very sad.
BJP is saying, why did the celebration went on?
This is not time for politics. We will definitely reply. This is not the time for politics.
This is not the time for politics, he says. Senior leader Rizwan Arshad there, who's MLA of the constituency, where he comes from and where the hospital is from. And now this is unfortunate tragic incident. We'll try to take a question from the BJP party president also, who just visited and come out. But even after the tragedy happened, the celebration went on for just 15 minutes is what DK Shivakumar said. And he does not say that I do not blame the police. He said that we cannot cane the people. This is what DK Shivakumar said. But our police department has done a good job, and this is not the fault
Imran, stay with us. I believe the team is leaving the Chinnaswamy Stadium. Neha, over to you.
Yes, well, in fact, these are visuals right now of the team. You'll be able to see, even as the ceremony, of course, has come to a conclusion here, it's ended. There is, of course, a very, very mixed atmosphere at the Chinnaswamy Stadium. On one hand, while, of course, you have fans who are still outside the stadium celebrating, still waiting to get a glimpse of the team as they're getting ready to leave. On the other hand, of course, are those who are still recovering from the trauma of what took place today. There was a stampede, at least about 11 people, of course, who've died now is what is being said right now from sources in the hospital there. But, what is, of course, most tragic is that even as questions were raised there, pointed questions by times now to the Deputy Chief Minister about how just 5,000 personnel would have sufficed for a crowd of, a few lakhs, the answer was that, this was an uncontrollable crowd. The parade, in fact, was cancelled. The open vehicle was cancelled. But did that really prevent this tragedy from striking? Evidently not. A big question, of course, that arises is why this could not have been done in a more staggered manner. Fans had started lining up outside the Chinnaswamy Stadium from as early as 11 in the morning. The gates were essentially opened only by about 3:30, 3:45, essentially prompting those lakhs of people to all, muscle their way into the stadium when this could have very well been done in a more staggered manner. We've seen, of course, much bigger matches. We've seen World Cups taking place with, unfortunate tragic events like this not happening. For a league match, of course, like
all right, Neha, stay with us. And while we're on those live pictures of the team leaving the Chinnaswamy Stadium, let's go across to IPL Chairman Arun Dhumal, who's joining us on the phone line. Mr. Dhumal, thank you so much for speaking to Times Now, but very, very tragic turn of events. Many questions being raised over there of what were the arrangements made, despite, of course, the huge outburst of celebration last night. We saw, how the Bangalore skyline was literally ablaze with fireworks in that sense. But today, were the arrangements adequate? What is the information that you have, Mr. Dhumal?
No, indeed very tragic, and I got to know about it some time back only. We were all coming back from Ahmedabad to our respective cities. In fact, none of the office bearers knew about it, any of the celebration that was to take place. So indeed very tragic, and I would like to first of all convey my heartfelt condolences. Everybody in the BCCI is very sad about this incident, and we had no knowledge about it. How did it happen? We'll have to look into it. But definitely we'll take a note of it and make sure that this kind of incident doesn't take place in the future.
Mr. Dhumal, can you confirm to us whether there was a formal arrangement made for security arrangements to the Bengaluru police, and what was the response to that?
No, we had no knowledge of any such arrangement or any such celebration to be taking place in Bangalore today. I don't know who organized it, whether fans came on their own or there was some call for them to call there, how it was supposed to happen.
RCB did put out a social media post this morning saying that there would be a victory parade. So as far as the franchisee is concerned as well, would you be seeking some explanations from them?
No, I've already spoken to them and told them to, cut off the event as soon as we got to know about it. And they also were not aware of what has happened outside the stadium.
All right.
So when they got to know about it, they also felt sad about it, and they have assured me that they are winding off the event.
Yeah, but Mr. Dhumal, some of the pictures that were coming in was that despite the tragic events taking place, despite the deaths that were reported, a good 45 minutes to an hour into it as well, the celebrations continued inside the stadium. That, of course, is raising some eyebrows as to whether it is perhaps insensitive of the organizers, would you say?
No, I'm not even sure whether they knew inside or not. I can't talk about the government officials. Obviously, they would be knowing of it. But when I spoke to RCB officials, they didn't know of it, and they showed me that when the moment they got to know, that they'll try and wind it up as soon as they can.
Right. All right, Mr. Dhumal, thank you so much for speaking to us here at times now. Very, very serious questions indeed. The franchisees were not aware of it, says the IPL chairperson. Of course, there are questions being asked as well of the state administration of the police in terms of whether there were adequate preparations that had taken place. Let's go across to our guest joining us. We have Rajinder Amarnath, who is with us. We also have Surbhi Hodigere, spokesperson of the BJP. Surbhi Hodigere, your response to what is being stated over here. Very, very tragic scenes that have been unfolding outside of the Chinnaswamy Stadium. And of course, there is serious questions about the law and order and the preparations that were made for this victory procession.
Madhav, what was to be a victory celebration, what was to be a moment of rejoicing, and what we saw yesterday on the streets of Bengaluru, the amount of crowd that had come out, the celebration that people wanted, the government has done the opposite. What was the need to have a celebration in Vidhan Saudha? And I am hearing reports that the police in the city were vehemently against having this sort of a celebration. Yet it was done on the behest of some people in the ruling government who wanted to take credit for RCB's victory. I am fuming today, Madhav, because I am getting calls from people continuously, from friends who are saying that what do? We are stuck. We don't know where to go right now. A celebration like this could have been better planned. What was the need to have the DCM holding the cup? The need was to have a responsible celebration, a celebration where things were taken into consideration, better planning. And let me tell you the most annoying part of this entire thing, the way the government has behaved, it is criminal negligence that death has happened. Let's not make this merely into a tragedy. The families are asking the right questions. The families who are grieving, sincere condolences to their situation, but they are asking the right questions. You put up a stage in front of Vidhan Saudha, have MLAs, their families do photo opportunity, but for the lakhs of fans who have been waiting for 18 years, you give them this sort of planning in the middle of Bengaluru, in CBD, in the central business district, where there is no possibility. Forget on a celebration like this, even on a regular day, there are chances of traffic being mismanaged, situations occurring. This should have been done better planned. There are better venues outside of the city. There was no need to take hasty decisions. I will not, as a member of the opposition, I will not accept that the government saying that no, this was merely a tragedy, but it was out of our hand, we had deployed all the police. You should have heeded to the police's advice that this is not well thought out. You cannot derive, you cannot run away from this criminal negligence act that you've done. Why Vidhan Saudha? Why did you decide to open the gates of the Chinnaswamy Stadium? Who are these organizers? All of these questions deserve answers right away, and very, very serious questions. I'm sorry, but I will not take it from the ruling party that we did everything that we could. You did everything you could in a mere 12 hours?
Well, those are questions for the state government to certainly answer, and perhaps there should have been better preparations in place on ground as well. Those are certainly pertinent questions that the state government has to respond to. But Rajinder Amarnath, we just spoke to IPL chairman Mr. Arun Dhumal, and he says that when he spoke to the franchisees, in this case the organizers RCB, they were not aware of the tragic incidents that had unfolded, and that's why you saw the celebrations carry on. How are you looking at this statement coming in, Mr. Amarnath? Is that something that is possible in your view?
Well, I already said in my statement that when the celebration was already going on in the middle of the ground, as far as cricketers are concerned, I don't think so they were aware of the tragedy. This is my personal feeling, because knowing a lot of cricketers who are there, especially Virat Kohli, he's a very emotional person, and I can say that if he had known about it, he would have been the first person not to participate, because giving a speech or celebration which was definitely going to haunt him now for the rest of the life, because you have spoken about the victory and there are people already going towards the mortuary. There are dead bodies being moved. What I fail to understand at the Chinnaswamy Stadium is there was no presence of first aid workers there. Probably if there were first aid workers, those tragedies could have been avoided, because the moment you give first aid to the critically injured person, maybe the lives could have been saved. But it was not saved at all because there were no trained people out there to give them the first aid. And also, I was talking about in 1984 when Mrs. Gandhi died, the Indian team came to know about it. The tour was cancelled. So the organizer must have got some sort of a news of the stampede outside the ground and the tragedy happening. I am very sure they could have taken the decision, but who had the authority to take the decision, I'm not too sure. I can't comment on that. But whatever has happened, I think that could have been avoided.
Absolutely. Very, very serious concerns at the moment. And in fact, we have Dr. Nikul Patel, leader of the Congress party, joining us as well. Dr. Nikul Patel, very, very tragic incident that has taken place in Bengaluru. But there are those who are questioning the BJP, particularly saying that why was this event organized in the first place? You have the Deputy Chief Minister there standing in the Chinnaswamy Stadium with the team. He says that the event just got over in 10 to 15 minutes. The point being made, however, is that as a part of the government, he would have certainly known that these deaths have taken place, and even the government or the police could have called off this celebration event that went on despite the tragedy unfolding in Bengaluru.
See, firstly, the event that had happened is an unfortunate event, and definitely you have listened our Deputy Chief Minister DK Shivakumar, and he said that we are taking the cognizance of the event and the action is there. He will be meeting all the affected or whatever people who are being injured into the event, and he's going to the hospital. And definitely, he also said what I listened, that he had called off the event, and further there will be no proceedings and no processions that will be allowed in the Bengaluru city due to the event that had happened.
Survi Hodegere, what do you make of the response of Nikul Patel?
Please explain to me as to why the event had to happen in Vidhan Sauda, why there were ministers, MLAs who were let on stage to take photographs while lakhs of supporters, RCB diehard fans were pushed into crowds that caused for the stampede. Who gave permission to do an event in Chinnaswamy Stadium? Who decided to open the gates at this random time? Who said it was ticketed? Who said it was not ticketed? Why was there so many people? Yesterday the entire city was abuzz. What does a responsible planner do when you realize that crowds are coming out and this is not something you have control over? A responsible planner takes a moment and says, let us not do anything in haste. Let us take all the authorities together. Let us ensure that there is a large enough space. Is the Chinnaswamy Stadium a large enough space? Is Central Business District a large enough?
There's some more updates coming in. In fact, DK Shivakumar in his statement has justified the celebration, saying that the police did their best and the entire event was wrapped up in 10 minutes. Now, this is quite a bizarre statement coming in from the Deputy Chief Minister, Neha, because the tragedy, the scale of it is seen. It's unfolding before our eyes even at the moment. But here you have the Deputy Chief Minister saying that the police did their best, but try telling that to the family members of those who've lost their lives.
Well, that's absolutely right, Madhav. Of course, questions being raised here when you know that there are at least going to be a few lakh people coming down. 5,000 police personnel, it really, of course, doesn't take, for one to really understand that that's barely about one police personnel for every 7 to 8 people. Understandably, of course, this was just a clear lack of planning on the government's part. As far as the administration is concerned, it's very easy to now come out and blame the people, saying that the crowd was unruly. Yes, even if we are for a second to consider that fans were ecstatic, emotional, and maybe a little unruly, the fact is that, that could have very well been brought under control. The crowds could have been staggered and allowed inside the stadium. Police, paramilitary forces, several other forces could have been deployed here to make sure that, they outnumbered the crowd over here. A host of other things could have been done. In fact, even right now, as we speak, you'd be able to see that, there is, of course, a massive crowd that's leaving the stadium right now. And while there is, of course, a sparse deployment of police over here, questions being raised about, why this was not better planned. We've been at the stadium now since about 11:30, 12 in the morning, and we've seen how the crowd has been swelling. It was only after tragedy struck, or when the government, probably realized that things are going to soon be going out of control, that you had all of the other division police later rushed here. Why was this not planned earlier? And most importantly, of course, Madhav, one thing that we've noticed is the kind of chaos, confusion that was created over here as far as, whether there were tickets that were being, given out to the public for this event, or was it an open event, from which gate was there an entry. There was zero clarity over here as far as the people are concerned. So not just, of course, the administration, but probably even the organizers there on their part, having failed. It was an absolute, chaotic frenzy crowd of fans over here who just gathered, finding any possible way to jump those gates, jump those walls. In the last 45 minutes that the event is supposed to be beginning is when the gates were opened, really raising questions about, what else could have happened if not a stampede?
Absolutely. Very, very serious questions, Neha. But if you have any of the fans there who are leaving, speak to them, get a sense from them of what they think of these tragic events that have unfolded. And if any of them witnessed the stampede, if you can get in a word from there as to what really transpired, why exactly the stampede took place, please get in a word from several of those fans who are there behind you.
Well, yes, in fact, Madhav, we'll try speaking to a couple of fans here who are, leaving right now. Ma'am, hi, can I ask you, we saw earlier there was a stampede that took place outside the stadium. At least about 10 or 11 people have died in that stampede. I want to ask you, as a fan who's come down to watch, the celebrations, how were the arrangements?
No, I think it was all last moment. First they asked us to log in through an app, but later they told us you can enter free. Like there was, I think parade would be better, there would be less stampede. Booking a stadium at the last moment, nothing was pre-announced. So if they wanted to do such big event, all the fans were eager, but I think it should be pre-planned. Like trophy was won yesterday, and if they wanted to do such big parade or wanted to do such big functions in Chinnaswamy Stadium, I think it could be, they could have used platforms like Book My Show or something.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Ma'am, I want to ask you, we've seen that there's still a lot of fans outside. The government has just responded on what's happened, and they say that we tried our efforts, the crowd was unruly. How do you see this statement coming in?
They know what's the big fan base that they are expecting. They know how many people, like even yesterday the crowds were totally out of control in places like Gandhi Bazaar and all. Like please, I have to receive this call.
Absolutely, thank you. Well, Madhav, an ambulance that you see that's been rushed right here to the spot of the stadium. Remember, it's just been a flurry of ambulances coming in and out of the stadium all evening as you had that unfortunate incident taking place there. And even now, in fact, as we're just trying to, of course, control the crowd here, the police is trying. Evidently, people, of course, falling sick, people being pushed around, people being injured, and these are very, very chaotic scenes coming out of the Chinnaswamy Stadium right now. Of course, you heard from one of the fans there, what she said is something that probably should not have happened. She says, of course, it could have been better planned over here, and that, there was no sort of pre-announcement or any of that was done. We'll get in some more fans. Ma'am, I want to very quickly ask you, there was a stampede that took place. Okay, all right. Well, of course, we'll try and speak to a couple of more fans, who are probably exiting the venue right now. Understand from them as well, how the arrangements were. Like, literally, it was barely a minute ago that we saw a lot of pushing and pulling that was happening over here. And now, as of course, there's a family here. We'll try, of course, speaking to them and understanding. Ma'am, can I ask you, there was a stampede that was reported just outside at the other gate. Yeah, you've come here with your son as well. I want to ask you, how were the arrangements that were done? Was it planned properly in your view?
We have just come some time back, so it was quite safe. It's okay.
Okay.
Maybe I don't know if it was earlier or something, but we were quite safe.
Okay, about 11 people have died in the stampede is what they're saying, that, it was a very unruly crowd. How do you see this?
I'm not sure. It is all RCB fans who have...
All right. In fact, that is, of course, at another gate that Neha is currently reporting from. But the kind of chaos, the kind of stampede that we have seen raising serious questions as to the arrangements over there. And these are questions that we will continue to ask here on Times Now, because this is completely unacceptable. The manner in which what was to be a day of celebration, where all the fans and their frenzy has turned into a complete fatality and a disastrous situation in which several fans have been injured. At least 11 of them have lost their lives is what we are told, which includes women and children as well. Was this entirely avoidable is certainly a big question that comes to mind. Neha as well as Imran, I'd like to thank you for joining us. We're going to slip into a quick break for now.